What's going on, YouTube family? T.O. here, Simplistic Fishing, back at you tonight for some 101 lessons. It's been a long time since I've been able to talk to you guys. I actually been a little bit under the weather. I got some COVID, haven't been able to go out on the lake, all that jazz. So finally back to normal, getting the old YouTube going back and going. So tonight I want to talk to you guys about really just pre-spawn. So pre-spawn in North Texas. It's one thing that took me a little bit to try and figure out, through the years, moving down here from Missouri. Coming down to Texas, and especially our lakes, because our lakes don't have necessarily, I mean, some of them do, like Fork definitely has all the normal things you would hear about when you're watching YouTube channels about where to find the fish and pre-spawn. But then you get in lakes like Hubbard, Lavon. We're going to talk about Granbury actually tonight as well, and we'll talk about Fork. So I really picked out 3 lakes, but what I was trying to say there was that on these lakes, we don't have the necessarily like huge flats that you would typically see, or you don't have a lot of secondary points that we can fish off of, things like that. So, Lavon is going to be a little bit bigger of a challenge when you're trying to break it down by just the normal rules of fishing. So tonight, what I want to do is really, let's go look at some of these lakes. Let's look at Granbury, let's look at Lavon, and let's look at Fork, and let's talk about different areas of the lake that we should really be honing in on about right now, as the pre-spawn starts to begin. So let's go ahead and jump in this thing. Let's talk about it. I'm also going to talk to you guys about some lures real quick too. Make sure you're throwing the right things when you get in these spots. Then we'll jump over to the mapping. Let's not delay. Let's roll. All right, before we jump into talking about the mapping and things like that, let's talk real quick about color selection and lures. So in pre-spawn, the one thing that I cannot preach enough to you is that you need to be throwing red. Red, 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 red. Find you red. If you're throwing moving baits, make sure they're red or they're orange. They have some red and orange mixed together. In fact, here's a pretty good example right here. Now, this is a larger chatterbait. This is one of those big old thumper ones. But I really like this. Now, it's not red, but it's got the orange on it. See how we have the orange here? Anything like that with that orange color, the chatterbait is always a deadly, deadly, deadly pre-spawn bait to be throwing. You got to throw it down a little bit slower, let it get down the bottom, bump it around, kind of work it a little bit more like a jig. Don't just always just throw it out there and retrieve it in. You will catch fish that way, but you'll catch a lot more if you'll throw it out there and let it go to the bottom and slowly reel this thing back and let it do the thumping. That is a very good lure to be using. Also, we talked about that red color. I got a couple rods here over to the side. A crankbait, a medium diving crankbait or a shallow diving crankbait, something similar to this. I think this is a Rapala DT4 or DT6. I can't remember. But anyways, it is a deadly, deadly lure to be using during this time. Again, look at my color selection. I've got that reddish orange color and then just kind of a green top to it. But that lure right there is definitely something you want to be throwing in the pre-spawn for sure. Now, the other thing would be pretty much, again, I said anything with red or orange. Now, there is one exception to that. I don't know why this exception works, but it's been working for me over the last few years, so I've kind of stuck with it. If it's pre-spawn time, I'm throwing the reds, I'm throwing the oranges, I'm throwing lipless rattle traps as well, lipless crankbaits, throwing those a ton, the red ones. Gold seems to work pretty well too, but the red and the orange, you really want to focus on that color. But then if you go over to a jig, you definitely could still focus on that color with the jig because that's really your crawfish are that color. But for whatever reason, I have had a ton of success with black and blue jigs during the pre-spawn. And then what I do is I put it just like this. Let me zoom this in for you. And in fact, we're gonna switch over. I'm gonna show you a fish that I just caught this weekend, 6.61 pounds off this lure right here. So maybe get a little live action while we're doing the 101 lesson here. So if you look at this jig, it's just a hybrid jig from 6 Cents. It's black and blue. All I did was put a Rage, I think those are called menaces. I put a Rage menace on the back and I dipped it in some red dye. So I still had that red color on there. Even though I'm going with black and blue, I've still got that hint of red that's out there. And I'm telling you, that's not my first big fish that I've caught on a setup like this. And it's probably not going to be my last either, because this right here is probably my #1 go-to lure when it comes to pre-spawn fishing. I work it pretty fast. You'll see it even in the video here in just a second. I work it pretty fast, moving it around the bottom. But I'm telling you, it catches giants.
Oh, God. Dang, dude. Later just said this ain't the deal.
God, damn, that's like 6 pounders.
It's a freaking dope, dude. Oh my God.
Hold on.
Yeah! Freaking jig, baby. God, he freaking smoked it. Look at that. We're gonna put that one on the scale for sure.
That's at least 6.
That's a beauty.
All right, so just a couple other things you might want to look at too. You know, we talked about the medium cranks, talked about the lipless cranks, square bills, things like that. Jerk baits work really well too. Now, I don't have a lot of success with them here in North Texas. I've been trying so hard lately to make the jerk bait work, and I've caught a few fish on it here and there, but it's still just not that staple bait for me. I just still can't seem to get the confidence down here with this off-colored water that I would have had a ton of confidence. We were up there in Missouri fishing Table Rock on the clear water with the jerk baits. I would have had a totally different feeling about them. But jerk baits are still good in pre-spawn. I know they're going to work here. I just got to figure them out. I got to get back in the rhythm of doing the jerk baits, but don't count those out. Just a couple other notes I was looking at down here. Other than that, I think that covers us. So lipless cranks, medium diving cranks really work better for me because we're focusing more on like 5 to 10 foot of water. Jigs, chatterbaits, and I think that's it. And those jerk baits. So focus on those, and remember, red and orange are absolutely critical right now. If you're out there throwing things that look like minnows, that shad pattern, that's not the pattern you want right now. They are focused on crawfish. They will be focused on crawfish for the next couple months, and we really need to dial in to that crawfish pattern. That red color is absolute money. All right, let's jump over. Like I said, I got 3 lakes for us to go through. I'll talk to you guys about what I'm looking for on these lakes and how we're going to try to find these pre-spawn areas. So to start off with, we're going to jump into Lake Lavon. I'll show you about 3 different spots there. Then we'll jump over to Lake Granbury. We'll talk about some spots over there, and then we'll switch back and we'll talk about Lake Fork as well. So I'm going to kind of mix all 3 of those in there, give you guys some good places to go try to check out this pre-spawn, and hopefully we're going to get you guys on some big ones. All right, let's switch over. I'm going to switch over to the PC. We're going to jump into web app and avionics. Take a look at Lake Lavon. Here we go. All right, so here we are on Lake Lavon, and when we're talking pre-spawn, trying to locate the fish, the first thing we need to think about is where are they going to spawn at? And you guys have heard me talk a lot about creek channels before, and following the creek channels, they'll usually lead you to good stuff. That is a really good thing as well when you're talking spawning. If you find the backs of the creeks, usually the backs of the creeks will lead you to a flat area. So if you look right in here, this is a big, huge flat. Back in here, this gets really shallow, but you've got some really good flats over in here too. And the reason you know they're flats is because if you look at these contour lines, they're spread out a lot further. See how skinny these is? It's a pretty good little drop here, and then this goes up to a flat area. Now, you've probably also heard on some other videos and things like that sometimes the best spots to go are right after the really tight contour lines start to spread out just a little bit before they go back into the flat. And then that's typically that area right in there is going to be an area that they would like to set up in. It's close to the flat, so they can move over to the flat, but they can also pull back pretty quickly and get back down off of that ledge into a little bit deeper water. So right in there would be a really good spot to look for pre-spawn, because I'm anticipating that they would spawn up in this area. And so I'm looking for that first stop sign, that first place for them to hang out before they would go back in there and spawn. So that right there would be a really good spot, I would believe, on Lake Lavon to take a look at. Another area that would be really good would be right here at this boat ramp. If you look at the boat ramp from a bigger picture, it's dead center in the middle of this big cove that comes back here. And that boat ramp sets up really, really well because they could set up there for weeks right off the creek channel, plenty of food coming by and stuff like that. And then when they decide to go spawn, they could either come over here and spawn in this little pocket, or they could go back here where this creek is, and spawn back in here as well. So some really good spots. That spot right there and that spot right there would be two spots that I would definitely take a look at when it comes to pre-spawn. Now let's go over here and take a look. Most pre-spawn areas face the north. Typically, that's not. I shouldn't even say most. I'm going to say your higher percentage spawning areas face the north. So anytime you can find a pocket or a cove that faces north, that's protected from the northern wind, that is typically a good place to go look. Now, of course, you want to look in the backs of these and see, are there any really big flat areas? Now, in this case, right here, there's a few of them. You've got pretty good flat that's back over here. Looks like it's pretty well protected from the northerly winds. We get up here, we've got another little flat back in there. And this is pretty flat, just all back in this whole area. So if we anticipate that they're going to spawn in one of these three areas, the next thing we need to look at is where would they pull off to before, or where would they pull up to right before they go back into those areas? So if I'm looking in this spot, one spot that really stands out to me is this road bed right here. I don't know if that road bed's there or not. I've never actually gone back here and fished this area on Lavon, but I would definitely check out that road bed because that could be a perfect stopping spot for them before they decide to go back in and spawn in one of those back spots. Also, as you pull further out here, you see this road bed. Definitely a very good area to be fishing around pre-spawn. Anywhere around that road bed and right over here off the edge of this point is going to be a good area too. That's a real good spot for them to set up on, especially with that creek bed being there and the flooded timber before they get back in here and go back into the spawning pockets. So again, a couple of good areas there on Lavon, and then one more that I want to show you before we hop over to Granbury would be back here. Now this cove doesn't necessarily face north. It's more of a northwest facing cove. But if you look at it, it's got some really good creek beds that are coming in. It's got a really good flat in the back of it. It's got flats back here, flats over here as well. So this is going to be a good area for them to set up in, and it's pretty well protected from the wind as well. The challenge here on this one is you don't see a lot of secondary points here. There's not a lot of things that you can physically see on Navionics that's going to say, hey, this is where they're going to set up at. You definitely want to try the edges of these points, the outside of these points right here. It could be a potential place. But really when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking pre-spawn, post-spawn, if they're traveling back here, where are they going to stop? Well, they may just use these docks, this cover, because they don't have a lot of other cover that they can set up on. Now, you might want to go back here and scan around the edge of these docks and out here to see if there's any brush piles or rock piles or anything like that that they may relate to. But those docks could be a pretty good spot pre-spawn and post-spawn as they go in there and do their spawning and they come back out. Those could be really good areas to fish around. There's also could be some tires here, so make sure you fish around the tires. Those are good stopping spots for the fish as well. So check out both those spots. And again, do some scanning around and see if you can find anything that's about halfway before you get back into that flat. And that's probably going to be a really good spot to set up on for the next couple of months. All right, so that covers us for Lavon. Let's move over here and let's go west. Let's go out to Lake Granbury because we had a subscriber ask us about Granbury and what we would do if we were fishing Granbury for pre-spawn and post-spawn fish. So right here, what I would do on this lake, I kind of looked around. I was like, man, I got to figure out what, if I was going out here for the first time and I wanted to focus on pre-spawn fish, where would I go? I really like this area right in here. I like how it has some really good depth to it. So you got a really good break that's right here with some really good depth. And then you've got a really good spawning flat just right up in here. So this looks really, really good. Definitely an area I would want to go check out for sure. You could also check out the road bed here and see if they're relating to the road bed or even just the edge of that point there as well. They could be relating there as well before they go back in here into these flats. Now the other side looks almost just as good, right? So you've got another one of those really good areas right here where the contours get really tight and then they start spreading out right off the edge of the point. So you could check right in there. Could be a potential spot to go look. You're also going to want to follow this creek bed back. You want to look like right in here off the edge of this one, right there where my little arrow is. And then, check out that road bed too. They could set up there. They could set up on this side too, where the contours are really tight and then they start to spread out right here. You could look right in there, right in that little corner. So I think that's going to be a really good spot to look at for pre-spawn and post-spawn fish on Granbury. Now, if I've come up here and I'm looking for things that are farther up to the north, I didn't see anything that really stuck out to me right in there, but I kind of liked this area right in here. So we've got a good creek bed. And if you look over here, I don't know if you can get back here because I saw this red thing. Like, it looks like you can because there's boat docks back here, but this is a huge flat area that's back in here. This is all big flat right in here as well. So I like this area. I liked how it's set up. And I also liked how there's just several different things for them to set up around docks and things like that. But if I'm pre-spawn and post-spawn on this one, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to look more over in here around the edge of this dock right in here. Now you've got a good creek channel swing going right there. So, that dock's going to be pretty good too. So they could set up right over here, find right where those contours get tight, and then they start spreading apart and really focus in heavily right in this, like this area right here, this area right here, even this area over here, where it gets up really shallow, really quick. I would definitely look in those spots. I think those are going to be really good spots for you to look pre-spawn and post-spawn. You could even come out here and even take a look at this roadbed and see if maybe they set up on this roadbed before they get further back in there. That's potential. But what I would really focus on the most part would be those contour lines I talked about where they get skinny and then they widen out pretty quickly. You also might want to check right here. This is a good little point that comes out before they make the decision to go back into these flats. So right here, I would look anywhere around that dock, especially on this side right in here and this side over here. And then, of course, back in here by this dock where that same turn is, where it gets tight and then it starts to really get into more of a flat. So I think you got some really good spots there for Granbury. Let's go up one more spot because I may not live that far down on the lake. So let's get up here by this Bentwater Marina. I think it was Bentwater Marina. Yeah, Bentwater Marina. So as we get back in here, now we've got some pretty good flats back in here to look at too, right? We got a pretty good flat right there. There's real good flats all back in here. This is all real shallow. Good flats back in there as well. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, where would they set up at? Let's say, for example, that they're going to go back in this pocket and they're going to spawn. Well, where are they going to set up at? Well, they're going to look for their first stopping spot. So this could be it, but this may still be too shallow for them. So you may have to get a little bit further out here off this point, somewhere right in here, somewhere out in here, closer towards the creek channel where they may just pull up here, hang out for a while before they shoot over here or shoot back in the back to do spawning. So anywhere right there off the edge of that point in that area would be a good area to look at for sure, right in here. And then I'd just look at that whole entire thing right there. Now, another spot over here, if you're looking at that creek channel, you want to look and see if it comes up and slams up pretty good. And if it does, and it gives you some pretty tight contours and then it spreads out like it does right there, this could have potential right in here too. And I know it doesn't look like that much on the map, but that definitely could have some potential in that area. And then as we move further back here, we get into some flats that are up here as well. So again, you just want to look at anywhere where those contours are getting tight and then they start to spread out pretty quickly. So maybe like right in here could be a good spot to look at. And then of course, you want to fish these docks that are on these creek channel swings. You can't pass those up, but any of these, like right in here too, off this little point that's here, notice how it's really tight right here. And then it opens up to this flat. That area right in there could be the area that you really want to look at. All right, so that covers us for Lake Granbury. Let's do one more before we finish off this video. I hope this is helping you guys. And again, I'm no expert, but I have had quite a bit of success bass fishing, but I'm sure there's all kinds of other ways that you can find pre-spawn and post-spawn fish. I'm just kind of sharing with you guys my little secret sauce that's worked for me. So on Lake Fork, we get into more of a lake here that's more like what we see when we're watching YouTube and stuff like that. And people are saying, hey, focus on the secondary points in the back of the pockets, in the back of the bays where it's flat and you're going to find fish. Well, Fork's got all that stuff. Fork's just an awesome lake. So a real good spot in Fork where that they're going to go back and spawn is going to be like up in here, up in Coffee Creek, where you've got a really good flat, you got a really good creek channel that's running through it. And so here, really what you're looking at is you're looking for staging spots, right? So if they're going to come back up in here and spawn, where are they going to stage up at? Well, that point would be a good spot for them to stage up at, right in here around this little riprap and the bridge and everything right in here would be a good spot. Anywhere where those big turns are, those secondary points are going to be really good areas for you guys to look at. So let's go up here. Let's go on the other side. We come up here in Running Creek. And again, if we're looking at Running Creek and we know that they're going to get back up in there somewhere and spawn, let's say up in there, where would they set up at? If they were going to spawn right here, where would they set up at before they went back in there? Well, right here off that corner, you'll notice there's some really tight breaks right there. And then you've got those spread out contours right in here would be a good spot to take a look at. You might also want to pull back down, maybe look right here off this secondary point, or come down here off the bridge and look right off the edge of the bridge. So we're really just looking for those stopping spots for them to go to. And again, those are really good protected by the wind areas that you could go look at. Now let's go pick one more. And this one I found a little bit further up. Make sure I get to the right one here. Found these right in here, and I really liked the way that these set up. So say, for example, this one right here. We've got a creek channel that runs back here. So you've got a nice little creek bed that runs back here. And then you get back into this big flat that's back here. So you're saying, well, where would they stop at? Well, their first stopping spots, some of the good stopping spots I would think would be right in here, right off the edge of this point. Or even on the other side, you can even come over here and look and see if they're over here right off the where it bends right there. And if they're not that far back yet, then maybe they're up here. So then you want to look right here, right off the edge of this point, and see if they're staging right up in that area. So those are the types of things you're looking for. Find the flats, and then from the flats, look for stopping spots. Those stopping spots can be cover, or they could be structure. So like in this case, it's all structure. There's nothing here really that we can point out from cover, but we can see the structure from the contour lines. Whereas in other spots, maybe it's a road bed where that gives you cover, where they're going to set up on that cover before they move back further back into those pockets. So anyways, guys, I hope that helps you a lot. It definitely has helped me, trying to locate the fish, especially when it comes pre-spawn and post-spawn. I think you'll hear a lot of people say it's some of the easiest times to fish, but in my case, I don't really think that is the easiest time to fish. So I think you really got to be paying attention to where you're fishing if you really want to get into some good quality fish. So pay attention to those things, really pay attention to where your fish are spawning at, and then start looking at where they would go once they're done spawning. And that's going to set you up really good for pre-spawn before they get there, as well as the post-spawn. Anyways, guys, hope this is helping a ton. Until next time, tight lines.